Now that we have pickups, we need some way to display our score to the player. It would also be nice to have a game over message upon death rather than just restarting. We'll do both of these by creating a basic user interface in this video. Our objectives will be to learn a little bit about Unity's graphical user interface system, and then use this system to create a score user interface and a game over user interface. So let's first add our user interface to display our score. Under the hierarchy, we can go to Create, UI for User Interface, and we want to create a text display for our coin. So let me go ahead and select Text. And notice what this did. It created a game object called Canvas and a child called Text. So the canvas defines the 2D space in which the UI elements are rendered. We'll talk more about user interfaces as we go, but for now, let's just get this set up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rename the canvas as main canvas, because this will be the main canvas for the game. Notice there's various options over here. One of those is the canvas scaler. So this defines how this scales depending on the size of the game screen. Right now I'm in a 4:3 aspect ratio down here, but perhaps I might be in like a 16:9, which will show a lot more. So I want my UI to scale properly. So rather than constant pixel size, I'm going to go ahead and say scale with screen size. Okay, let me go to the text game object, and I'm going to go ahead and rename this right away. Hit return. I'll call this my score text. And let me tap F. So notice F actually zoomed to this. So the game object we can see is out here in my scene. It has new text on it. But we're in 3D view now, which doesn't exactly make sense when we're looking at 2D elements. So let me click the 2D option under the scene. And if I zoom out, we can actually see here's the canvas and here's the text below that canvas. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to anchor our text properly to the canvas. So at the very top, notice there's this little diagram. Let me click on that, and this brings up the options of anchoring. So at the top it says Shift, also set pivot, Alt, also set position. So in general, if you hold Shift and Alt at the same time, this will allow you to do several things at once. So let me go ahead and say I want to anchor this score. I'm going to have it, at the top of the screen here. So holding Shift and Alt, let me click the top portion, and you can see, boom, it jumped right up there to the top of the canvas. So right now it says new text. I'm just going to show the score, so I'll hit 0 as a placeholder. And then I can modify some of the font properties, so I'll just use the default font here. I want to make it a lot bigger, so I'm going to make it 40. And I want to make it bold. And notice I can't see the text anymore because it's actually too big for the display. So one thing I could do is actually drag this out and make it bigger, and there it appeared again. But let me go ahead and undo. One quick way to resolve this is to change the overflow from wrap to overflow in both the horizontal and vertical directions. And you can see, oh, there's the text. So it's actually bigger than the size of the text box. But it's actually visible. I usually like to overflow depending on what I'm doing, just to make sure that it will always show properly. So if I got a huge score, it's not going to all of a sudden disappear from my display. So I'll set the alignment to align to the middle of the display, and I want to change the color of the text. I don't want it to be black because it's not showing up very well. You can actually see it there. So let me click color, and once again, I've got a pre-selected color, EEFFFB9B. So it's kind of a off-white color. And I'm going to go ahead and add that as a preset. And I'll just call this my text color, so I can use it again in the future. Notice there is an alpha set on this, so it is semi-transparent a bit, which is okay. So we have our very basic main canvas, our main UI, our score display set up. While we're creating UI, why don't we create a game over screen as well? So to do this, I'm going to basically create a whole nother canvas. So under Create, I can go down to UI and actually select Canvas. So I get another canvas. Canvases, once again, hold all of the UI elements. I'm going to name this my Game Over canvas. Once again, I'm going to set the scaler, the canvas scaler, to scale with the screen. So just like before, I want to have text on the end game screen. So with the canvas selected here, I can go to Create UI and select Text, and then it will put it as a child object of that canvas. So I need to set up this text component like we just did, but one thing that we could do is we could actually copy values from one component to another. So if I go back to the main canvas and go to the text component, I could actually go and click the little drop-down gear and select Copy component. Now when I go to this text component, which I'm going to rename End Game Score Text. So I'm going to go over to the text component, select the gear, and then I can say paste component values. Since it's the same type of component, I don't want to add another text component. I just want to paste the values into this component. So I do that, and boom, makes it 0, sets up the font, sets up the color, and all of that stuff. I'm going to tweak it a little bit, but at least that gets me started. So where I want to place this is actually in the middle of the display. So this is going to be the game over screen. So I don't want the score to be at the top anymore. I want it to be in the middle. So let me click on the anchoring options, and once again hold Shift and Alt on my keyboard, and I'm going to click on the center, so it's right there in the middle. And on the end game screen, I want to make this a lot bigger, so I'm going to set the font from 40 up to 150, so it's going to be a nice big display. And I want to move it up a little bit, so sort of the top of the text is in the center. There's various ways I could do this. One way is I could just take this position Y and run it up a little bit. So I'm just clicking and dragging on that, or I can just type in a fixed number. So right there, just sort of slightly above center. So one thing that you can see is I've got sort of two canvases here, and it might become a little bit confusing. So let me actually inactivate the other canvas. So if I click on that game object, I could just click the active inactive checkbox. So it's inactive now. I don't see it. So now I'm just focusing on my game over canvas. Okay, so this is the game over, so we see the final score. I also want to have a button to allow the player to play again. So let me go under Create UI and choose Button. And you can see it made a button below that. I'm going to go ahead and rename this as Play Again Button. So the first thing let's do is anchor the button. So let me click on the anchor, holding down Shift and Alt. Let me put it right there in the center of the screen. You can see it overlaps a little bit with my option above. So sort of in the opposite direction, the position Y. I'll drag it down a little bit to put it below the score. And the default button doesn't look all that great. So let's tune it up a little bit. So right here where it says image, this is based off of a UI sprite image. Let's go ahead and change the color from white to EEFFFB9B, which I think was actually the same color as the text. You can see it's a little bit semi-transparent. I also don't like the fill, so I'm going to turn off that fill in the middle. So I've got my button looking about right, but I also want to change the text. And the text is actually a child of the button. So let me click on that text. And once again, I can copy the properties from the score text as an example. So let me go back to the score text and copy that component. It might still be in my clipboard, but it may not be. So let me go back here and then paste the values. And you can see it says 0, but I want to make it say play again. It's probably too big, so let me scale it down to maybe 27. And the text is overflowing, so it's overflowing the edges of my button. So if I go back to the play again button, I can basically either visually, tap F, I could drag these out, or numerically up at the top, I can make it a little bit wider, maybe a little bit taller. And then I could go to the text and maybe center within that area. So the last thing that I want to do is actually set up the behavior of my button. So on the text where it says play again, I'm going to go ahead and add a component, and that component is going to be a script, and I've got one script that's called UI button level load. There's also UI button quit game, which would be another option if I wanted to have a quit button. So let me use the UI button level load. It asks the level to load. And for now, I'm going to set this as level 1 since I only have one scene in the game. And when we load that scene, it's basically like playing over. So I've got that script component attached to my text. The last thing I need to do is make the button actually select that. So back under play again. Down here it has an on click where we set up what happens when you click the button. So let me go ahead and click the plus, and we drag in a game object here, or I can hit the target. Let me just drag that game object right onto that option, and by doing that, it basically loads all of the sort of components and properties of that game object. So if I click the drop down now, you can see that UI button level load is here, and it kind of decomposes the script, which is a little confusing, but the script basically has a load level function. This will become more clear once we look at scripting, but for now, just trust me, pick load level. So our button is all set up. So we've been looking at the game over screen. Once again, that's the one that's active. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the game over canvas and make this inactive, and then go back to the main screen or the main canvas and make this one active. So we have our UI all set up and ready to go. We have our GUI elements created, but they're not yet working. We'll resolve that in the next video.